The scent of old wood and dust lingered in the air as David pushed open the creaking attic door. It was a rainy Sunday afternoon, and he had returned to his late grandmother's house to help prepare it for sale. The home had been in the family for generations, filled with memories and perhaps secrets. He had always found the attic to be a strange place, quiet, dimly lit and untouched for years. Stacks of boxes lined the walls, covered in cobwebs and time. As David carefully moved things around, a small, worn trunk in the corner caught his eye. Unlike the others, this one was locked, but the key dangled from a rusty nail on the nearby beam, as if waiting for him. With a hesitant breath, David opened the trunk. Inside were faded photo albums, handwritten recipes, war medals and old lace handkerchiefs, remnants of lives once lived. But tucked underneath a folded quilt, he found something unexpected. A pale blue envelope, sealed and slightly yellowed with age. On the front, in delicate cursive handwriting, was his name, David. He froze. Why would there be a letter addressed to him in a trunk that hadn't been opened in decades? He turned it over slowly. It was postmarked from 1978, years before he was born. His hands trembled slightly as he broke the seal. He had no idea that within that envelope was a truth so powerful it would shake the foundation of everything he thought he knew about his family. And in that quiet attic, beneath the slanted ceiling and rain tapping softly on the window, David took the first step into a story that would change his life forever. David sat on the attic floor, the letter trembling slightly in his hands. The paper was fragile, its edges worn thin, but the handwriting was graceful and clear, his grandmother's unmistakable penmanship. As he began to read, every sentence pulled him deeper into a secret world long buried. My dear David, if you're reading this, it means the time has come for the truth to be known. I have carried this secret for most of my life, and though it was done to protect our family, I now realize that silence has caused more harm than good. David's eyes narrowed as he read on. The letter revealed that his mother, whom he had always believed to be the biological daughter of his grandparents, was actually adopted as a baby. Her birth parents were a young couple from a neighboring town, deeply in love but torn apart by tragedy. The father had died in a car accident before the baby was born, and the mother, heartbroken and alone, became gravely ill shortly after childbirth. In a twist of fate, David's grandmother, who had been a nurse at the time, was the one who cared for the dying woman. Moved by compassion and bound by a promise, she agreed to raise the newborn girl as her own, swearing never to reveal the truth. Your mother never knew, the letter continued, and I feared that telling her would only bring confusion and pain. But I believe that you, David, have the strength to handle what comes next. David's heart pounded. There was more, an address scribbled near the bottom, and a name, Anna Moreau. The letter hinted that Anna was connected to the child's biological family, possibly a relative who had also been kept in the dark. And then came one final line that made David's breath catch in his throat. Blood doesn't always define family, but truth does. You deserve to know who you are. He lowered the letter slowly, his mind racing. In one moment, everything he believed about his heritage, his history and his identity had shifted. There were questions that demanded answers. Who were his mother's real parents? Why had the truth been hidden for so long? And who was Anna Moreau? The attic suddenly felt colder. David knew one thing for certain. He couldn't leave this discovery behind. The letter had opened a door, and whatever was waiting on the other side, he had to face it. David couldn't stop thinking about the name at the bottom of the letter, Anna Moreau. Who was she? What did she know? And why had his grandmother waited a lifetime to write those words? Back in his apartment, the letter sat unfolded on his kitchen table, along with the faded envelope and a cup of untouched coffee. David had already scanned the local directories and old newspaper archives online, trying to find any trace of Anna Moreau. There were a few scattered listings, but only one matched the region and time frame his grandmother had mentioned. A woman in her 60s, living in a quiet town called Ashfield, just 2 hours away. The next morning, David packed the letter, some family photos, and his notebook. He needed answers, and he was finally ready to ask the questions. Ashfield was a sleepy town nestled between wooded hills and wide, winding roads. David drove past vintage diners, forgotten train tracks, and brick buildings that looked unchanged since the 1950s. His GPS led him to a small white house with a red mailbox and a rocking chair on the porch. The name on the mailbox, A. Moreau. He hesitated before knocking. What if she didn't know anything? What if she slammed the door in his face? But something told him he had to try. The door opened slowly. A woman with silver-streaked hair and warm brown eyes peered out, cautious but kind. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Hi," David said, clearing his throat. I'm David. I believe you might have known someone named Margaret Bennett. My grandmother. I found a letter. It mentioned you." Anna's expression shifted instantly. Her eyes widened and her hand went to her mouth. For a long moment she just stared at him. "You'd better come inside," she said softly. The living room smelled faintly of lavender and old books. Family portraits lined the mantel, some recent, others black and white, frozen in time. David handed her the letter. She sat silently as she read, her fingers trembling at the edges. "I never thought I'd see this again," she whispered. "Your grandmother. She and my sister were close. My sister's name was Elise. She died young, and the baby, your mother, was taken in by Margaret to give her a chance at a better life." David listened carefully, every word confirming what the letter had only hinted at. "Did you know?" he asked. "I knew I had a niece out there," Anna replied, eyes misty, "but I didn't know where she went, or what happened after Elise passed. Your grandmother promised to write, but she never did. I never blamed her, though. It must have been so hard for her, carrying all that alone." They talked for hours, about Elise, about the family, about the secrets that had kept them apart for decades. Anna pulled out old photos and letters of her own, including a picture of Elise holding a newborn wrapped in a blanket. David's heart ached. It was the first time he had ever seen a photo of his biological grandmother. The puzzle pieces were beginning to come together, and with them, a deeper longing grew inside him. Not just to uncover the past, but to reconnect the threads of a family torn apart by silence. The weeks that followed felt like something out of a dream. What began as a dusty attic discovery had now blossomed into something much bigger, a journey of restoration. David and Anna stayed in close contact, exchanging stories, photos, and memories. The more they spoke, the more the missing pieces of his family's history began to fall into place. But one major piece remained untouched: his mother. David wrestled with the question of whether or not to tell her. She had gone her entire life believing one version of her story. Would revealing the truth bring healing or only pain? He prayed, he journaled, and he waited. Finally, on a crisp Saturday morning, he sat across from his mother at her kitchen table. Her eyes sparkled with warmth as she poured tea into matching ceramic mugs, one of their familiar routines. "There's something I need to talk to you about," David began, voice soft but steady. She tilted her head, sensing the weight in his tone. He pulled out the letter. At first, she didn't move. Her hands held the paper gently, her eyes scanning every word in silence. Then her expression slowly shifted, from confusion to disbelief to something broken and raw. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, finally, "I always wondered. There were things that never quite added up. I thought maybe I was just imagining it." David reached across the table and held her hand. I didn't want to hurt you, but I felt like you deserved to know." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't know how to feel, but I'm glad you told me." He exhaled, the tension in his chest beginning to release. Then he said, "There's more. There's someone I want you to meet." A few days later, David and his mother stood outside Anna's home. Nervous energy filled the air. His mother clutched a small photo album in her arms, the only tangible link she had to the people she never knew. When Anna opened the door, time seemed to pause. The two women stared at each other, silent at first, as though searching for a shared memory buried too deep to recall. Then, slowly, tears welled up in both their eyes, and they stepped forward, arms wrapping around each other in a long, trembling embrace. No words were needed. Sisters. Not by upbringing, but by blood, by fate, by the miracle of truth finally revealed. For hours, they sat together in Anna's living room, sharing stories, flipping through photos, and marveling at the unexpected journey that brought them together. There were tears, laughter, awkward pauses, and a growing sense of peace that settled over them like a soft blanket. David watched quietly, heart full. He had not only uncovered a family secret, he had reconnected a family, mended something that had been broken for decades. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear what happens next, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll be the first to hear the continuation of this emotional journey and many more powerful family stories just like it. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. We post inspiring, mysterious, and heartfelt stories that will keep you coming back for more. Your support means everything and helps us bring you more true and touching tales. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next chapter coming soon.